Welcome back to Open Line. We have the phone number right there, 615-737-7587. Just call in with all your questions. We're talking today about boat safety and outdoor safety with TWRA. My guests tonight are Sergeant Nathan Karch and Officer Clay Hetland, the two gentlemen you see on the screen right now. So, guys, right before we tossed a break, we were talking about boating under the influence. And so, if you can, just tell us a little bit about how it's much different than driving under the influence when, we know that alcohol and boating oftentimes go hand in hand when they shouldn't be.
They do. And I think, by nature, people are out there to have a good time. They want to drink, but we encourage them to do it in moderation and be responsible about it. The one thing that we encourage everybody to do is have a sober driver, but furthermore, that driver needs to be familiar with how to operate that boat. They need to be familiar with the waterway. They even need to be familiar with how to trailer that boat and potentially operate the vehicle attached to the trailer to take it home back to whatever residence it belongs to. So you don't need to just pick a random person on the boat and designate that to be your sober driver for the day. They need to have a little bit of background and experience with operating vessels and stuff like that, whether it be during daylight or nighttime as well, and make sure they are sober. That doesn't mean just a few more or a few less than everybody else. They need to be the sober driver.
And so, is there any difference between? I know when you're behind the wheel of a car, there's a certain limit that you can be under, 0.08. And
correct.
with driving a motor boat, I'm wondering, is there the same type of threshold, to where, you can have possibly a drink and not necessarily, surpass that amount?
Clay, you want to grab that one?
Sure. Yeah, no, so the per se law, which you referenced 08 on the roadway, is the same on the waterway. So it's hard to put a quantitative amount on the number of drinks, before that threshold. And that threshold, under that threshold, does not necessarily mean that you are sober. In regards to, like Nathan spoke of earlier, environmental factors on the lake, which would cause you to become impaired a little bit quicker. And the influx of drugs, especially in Davidson County, it's a big thing on the lake, as well on the roadways with the officers dealing with it. So yeah, we do kind of deal with the same thing. The mentality is definitely different, as you referenced, in a car versus on a boat. It's expected on a boat, but we are trying to heavily educate people. We want them to have fun, but we want those sober operators, as Nathan mentioned.
And we've talked about the differences, now between operating a car as opposed to operating a boat. But earlier we were also discussing, how lawmakers are making this so that it's the same across the board for boating under the influence or driving under the influence. Can either one of you tell us a little bit about why or what those comparisons are at this point?
So as of July 1st of last year, the penalties for boating under the influence and driving under the influence mirror each other. So Mothers Against Drunk Driving, a fantastic group, was really influential in getting that done, because we have seen an increase in boating fatalities, especially with alcohol being a main factor in the incident or the fatality or the serious injury or the property damage or what you may have. But they were very instrumental in that. So yes, as of July 1st of last year, the penalties mirror each other. It doesn't affect your driver's license as far as getting a BUI, being convicted on a BUI, but the penalties as far as jail time and fine amount are the same as a DUI.
I see. And those are pretty stiff penalties when it comes down to it. I mean, whether it's a fine or, jail time, I mean, it's nothing to mess around with. But I can imagine that, for some people, they might still think that it's two completely different things. And, while it may not affect your driving record, I mean, who has the money to kind of spend on these types of fines? But I guess either one of you guys can answer this, because, you know, I think that there's still some sort of there may still be some sort of hesitation with people understanding the severity of, you know, driving a boat behind, you know, under the influence. You know, if they say someone is only had a drink or something of that nature, you know, they may still be safe to operate the boat because they're the only ones with experience driving the boat. I mean, what would you say to folks who might think, okay, well, you know, it's not as bad as driving a car because obviously I've got open waterways in front of me, I can still make it work. You know, what would you say to those folks?
I would say, you know, honestly, they're wrong. It's exceptionally or exponentially more dangerous, in my opinion, just because there is no lines, you know, there's no direction of travel. We do have navigation laws in place, but a lot of people, new boaters, they don't understand those navigation laws. So they see water and they're like you said, I can go any direction. Well, it's not true. There are navigation laws in place. But you also have environmental factors playing a huge role in impairment. The sun beating down on you, waves, loud noises all day long, and all those come together and really affect your overall impairment, much more so than if you were in a car. So you're dealing with constant obstructions potentially in the water. It could be other people, other boaters, logs, rocks, and you're dealing with different depths, different channels, sub-channels. So there's a lot of different factors playing into it, and I think it's that much more dangerous just because you don't have a designated lane of travel marked with lines and traffic lights that you're always going to obey. It's much more apparent at night just because people utilize the navigation lights. So you'll be able to see red and greens and things of that nature. But if you don't know those navigation laws already, then you can't delineate any of that during the daytime if you don't have that education background prior to arriving on the waterway. Absolutely.
Well, we'll have plenty more coming up here. Just remember, you can always call at 615-737-7587. We're here. We got the open line. We'll hear from you soon.